everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool transfer show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Things have definitely heating up in the past 24 hours. It looks like Newcastle want to play games, so that's why I've titled my show as Game On because the games have begun between Liverpool and Newcastle. So we'll talk about the topic very shortly. Plus, there's been some developments in the Luis Díaz transfer embargo, and we've also heard some shock links with a United player, which we'll also talk about during the show. So let's begin with the first story, and that involves the two strikers that we've been talking about for the last 48 hours, and that is Alexander Isak and Hugo Ekitike. Now, just to give an update on what's happened today, Frankfurt have actually rejected a bid of £70 million from Newcastle. And in regards to Liverpool and Newcastle, Newcastle haven't really given Liverpool any indication if they're willing to do business or they view Isak as unavailable, that he's not for sale. And because of this uncertainty, Liverpool have decided to put pressure on Newcastle by contacting Frankfurt about the possibility of signing Hugo Ekitike, their prime target, and are actually willing to place a higher bid than Newcastle for Ekitike. So, as I mentioned, it's game on with Newcastle right now. And what a crazy 24 hours it's been. Newcastle fans were getting excited, thinking that they're going to buy both strikers, and some of them still do, to be fair. But right now, it's a different scenario. There's a possibility that Liverpool could sign both players. And guess what? Financially, we can. Liverpool can afford to sign both strikers, and it'll cost of in the region of £200 million between the two players there. And furthermore, there's suggestions that Isak is open to the move to Liverpool, which it doesn't surprise anyone because firstly, we're Liverpool. Secondly, we're the Premier League champions. And thirdly, Liverpool wouldn't be ready to place a huge bid of around £120 million if we didn't believe there's interest from the player to join the club. So right now, it's a bit of a crazy situation. It keeps evolving as the time goes on. Um, so right now, it appears that Liverpool are after two strikers, that they've got a hand in two jars right now in terms of potentially recruiting new players to the squad. So, big question is there any possibility that we end up signing both Isak and Ekitike? Maybe. I think there's a very slight chance of that happening. And personally, I wouldn't want that to be the scenario for Liverpool. I think it should be one or the other. It shouldn't be both Isak and Ekitike. And the reason why I don't want both players is because I don't think they can play together. If they were to join Liverpool, for example, it could be a slight change of formation where we play with two strikers. And I don't think they'll form a good partnership because they're quite similar in terms of style of play. And let's say we continue to play with front three and we've got Isak through the middle. Ekitike would need to find himself a position, and that would end up being the left wing position. And even though he did start his career playing in that role, it's not the position I think he would want to pursue, and I don't feel like it's a road that he would favor at this stage of his career. So we'll see. In terms of developments, I don't think we'll sign both strikers. That would be a crazy scenario if that was to happen. Trying to get Isak through the door seems like a bit of a stumbling block right now. The Ekitike deal, however, could be a bit more smoother transition, especially if we're willing to spend a higher bid to what Newcastle are offering right now. And I've been online today. Newcastle fans are acting very shameless, to say the least. You'd think that they're the current Premier League champions. The way they're moving, they're feeling very entitled that no one is allowed to bid for one of their players. Like, how dare Liverpool try and bid for a player under their contract? Some fans are even suggesting that Liverpool should bid 200 million to acquire his services. what are people on right now? What world are you living in that we should bid £200 million? The transfer record in this country is 110 with the Caicedo deal. So by us bidding 120 million, we're breaking the British transfer record. So, with that kind of money involved, it's very, very difficult for Newcastle to refuse, in my opinion. I spoke about this last night. I feel like it's a deal that makes sense for Newcastle going forward, but the fan base are acting like they're a big club, and I say that respectively as well, and they feel like that they could have both of those players and go on a title charge. Like that's the kind of tone they had. That's the kind of chest they're showing right now. Look, honestly, I really hope we have the last laugh and we end up signing Alexander Isak in this window. Now, let's switch the scenario a little bit. If Isak isn't for sale, and that is the stance coming from Newcastle, then why haven't they rejected our approach? We've officially approached, club to club and put it out there to say that we are interested in signing Alexander Isak. Are you willing to do business? They haven't said no, he's not for sale. They've just left it kind of in the air. And that's why Liverpool are feeling a bit uncertain right now because if they wait too long to get a formal response, our sort of backup option would be Ekitike, and they're already currently in negotiations with the player and the club. So Newcastle are trying to pull a fast one where they're negotiating a deal for Ekitike and hoping that they can secure his signature and would try their best to keep Isak involved. And let's say they reject us with the Isak bid or whatever approach we give, we can't sign our backup option because they've actually made that signing in Ekitike. So they're trying to pull a fast one, and then they're trying to act a bit funny now because they're trying to act like the victim. I'm hearing that Yasser Al Rumour, the governor of the Public Investment Fund for Saudi Arabia, feels like Liverpool are bullying them right now in forcing their hand to sell Alexander Isak. Look, call it what you will, but all I know is that if we're not signing Isak this summer, we'll go all in for Ekitike. And yes, we are acting like big bullies. Say how you feel because that's how I'm seeing it, and that's how Liverpool should be moving right now. So all I have to say is to Newcastle, choose wisely. We either go for your main striker or we sign your primary target. So pick one, and I'm expecting some more developments to take place in the next couple of days. We've already, seen the ball moving with regards to this news from yesterday. I feel like we're going to see some more developments tomorrow, and probably even get some sort of indication of what's happening and is Isak leaving or not. Only time will tell. But all I can say is right now, sit back and let the games begin because Newcastle are trying to play a cheeky game with us, and we're matching them as well. To be fair, we are putting pressure on them to make a decision. Are they selling Isak or not? If not, no problem. We're going to go for Ekitike because we've already spoken with Frankfurt. We've spoken to Frankfurt today. We've contacted them to say that look, we're interested in Ekitike as well, and whatever Newcastle are offering, we're going to offer more money for Ekitike. So we've put Frankfurt on alert that look, if you are selling him, let us know because we're willing to spend bigger or willing to spend more money on Ekitike than Newcastle. So, play it how you will. But all I know is one of these players will be joining Liverpool. That's the indication that I'm getting. So yeah, let me know in the chat what you guys thinking. I feel like this is definitely something that we'll hear further develops very, very soon. Before we move on to the next topic, just going through some of the comments. Daz, big up Daz, says, big up Aussie. Hope you're well today. Also, what do you want for the striker? So originally, when we were linked to him a few weeks ago, I think they were after £80 million, which is quite steep, if I'm being honest with you. But if you've got a team like Newcastle that are willing to spend around 70, then that is going to be the ball mark or that range that Frankfurt will be willing to do business with. So because they've already got a 70 million bid rejected. I think they're holding out for about 75, 80 million pounds. And Liverpool in this scenario, if they can't get Isak, they will put all the efforts to sign Ekitike, and I think they'll be willing to spend 80 million pounds on the French striker. So only time will tell, but let's see. I do feel like we're gonna get some further news tomorrow, and it will definitely paint the picture in terms of where we stand and what is the situation. Because we're getting news that Isak is open to the move. You know, he'd be willing to move. But I feel like from Isak, if he does want that move, he's gonna have to voice it a little bit or put his foot down and let Newcastle know that he wants to leave. He might not need to do it in a formal transfer request sort of way, but he definitely needs to let the club know that he's not willing to stay. He wants to leave, and he wants a deal to be concluded between Newcastle and Liverpool. So I think he needs to voice his sort of focus right now, or he needs to voice his intentions. If he wants to join Liverpool, let the people know. If not, then stay put. So we'll hear something, I think, very soon. In the next 24, 48 hours, I'm sure we'll get an update in regards to Isak. Is he coming? Is he going? We'll soon find out. Just got a comment here from Oz and Come back. Said, big up the man, Ozzy. Big up yourself, Oz and come back. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for tuning in as always. Oz and come back. Said, Richard Hughes needs to hire you to speak to Hugo if we miss out on Isak and sign him instead. You heard the sales pitch yesterday, so yeah. If Richard Hughes needs some help, I'm all on board. I'll try and get that moving. So yeah, no problem on my side to do that. That's saying big up to Ozan. Um, Ozzy, look at what David Cock published about Lucho. Is that in regards to the Al Nassr bid? If it is, we'll speak about that very, very shortly. Um, I hope he's not spouting BS. Always got to take these sort of news and rumors and speculation with pinch of salt. I wouldn't know. Because I've not really sort of checked his track record in terms of David Cop. I always feel like he always presents like the breaking news, and seems to be from good sources as well. Um, but we'll talk about Diaz very, very shortly. Let's talk about it now, in fact. So we had this show last night as well. We spoke about there was a latest development actually when we were live last night, and that was that Luis Diaz and Vincent Company had a chat on FaceTime, and Diaz has said yes to his proposal and has shown his intentions or would like to join Bayern Munich. But that's all good and well. But the message from Liverpool is show us the money. That's all we care about in this scenario. You can have as many FaceTime calls like you're in a long distance relationship, but this is a matter of business. If you want to acquire the player, meet our valuation, which is around 80 million pounds. If not, I'm sure there may be someone else knocking on the door. And here we go. Newsflash, there is someone knocking on the door, and it's Al Nassr. So Al Nassr are willing to spend big, and they're willing to place a bid of around 100 million euros, which is roughly around 86 million pounds to sign Luis Diaz. Now, Liverpool will happily accept that offer, but the ball is now in Luis Diaz's court. Because let's be honest, Luis Diaz is in a situation where he needs to show his true colors. Apologies. Is he all about his Benjamins, or does he still have a desire to play at the highest level in Europe? We'll see his real motives because he's shown that he wants to leave Liverpool. He's made it very clear. He's said it out loud that he's had discussions with other clubs, which is very, very disrespectful to do that. But I'm not liking the way he's been so open about things like that. It's not done with any class. And frankly, he seems a bit desperate. Now I know he's not earning the salary that he wants, but he's still earning a decent 55K a week. We'd all love to have that sort of paycheck every week. And I feel like he needs to sort of be appreciative as well. We brought him from Porto. He's been at a club where he's won titles. He's been part of you know our recent success as well. So he needs to show a bit of appreciation. And look, I'm sure that if he handles the situation a bit better, maybe there's an opportunity of having an increased salary going forward. If he shows that commitment, desire to play for the club, and it can also be done where because we don't know what salary he's asking for. He could be asking for 200k, 250k, and we're like, no, there's no way we'd accept anything along those lines. So if he's asking for 100k, 150, then that's a bit more reasonable. I think, and I think the club would consider it. The only thing is the club wouldn't give him a long-term contract. Probably, if he's 28, he'd probably give him a 2-year extension, if that makes sense. So, or a 1-year extension on his current deal. So, I think it just depends on what his demands are. And it's the same situation with Konate, where we don't know what Konate wants as well. The rumor was that we were willing to spend or willing to offer him 200k per week. And apparently that's not good enough for him. So, what are these players after? Is it the weekly salary? Do they want an increase in that? Do they want to just leave the club and join a team that will give them, a crazy sign-on fee? Is this all money orientated? Because it comes across like that, and it's such a shame because Liverpool have, progressed so much over the last few years. We're at the level where I believe we are one of the most elite clubs in world football, and if your players are wanting to leave just for money, it doesn't bode well with me. We're here to build a legacy right now. We're here to challenge for honors. No one expected us to win the title last season, so we beat the odds and we did the unexpected, and he was a part of that. That's a special, bond that he will have with the club in terms of what he produced last season. Because I feel like Diaz produced his best season for Liverpool last season. I would like him to stay. I think he's a very talented player. I feel like he's effective whenever called upon. But if that's his tone where he wants to go all out, he's just not happy to be at Liverpool anymore, then you know where the door is. Make your way there because I don't want anyone to stay at the club thinking they're above, themselves and thinking that they're entitled to earning whatever they desire in their minds. The club are giving you a contract, you're still earning a decent amount. And look, if you play your cards right, if you do things and conduct things the right way, you may get improved terms. It might not be 200k or whatever you've demanded for, because I actually have no idea. But the club would be willing to improve your current terms. I genuinely believe the club would do that. It just depends on what your requirements are and the length of the extension as well. So right now, we'll just have to wait and see. I might be completely wrong here, and the Liverpool are not willing to extend anything. They don't want no new contract. They don't want to give him no new terms, and that's probably why he's got this kind of persona right now, where he's just fed up and just wants to leave. So if that's the case, it's probably best for him to move on. But whoever wants him, pay up. You got to pay a big amount of money. You can't pay 60 million pounds, because that's the bid that they placed yesterday. That's roughly how much we paid for Diaz. We paid around 40 odd million euros plus add-ons that equal to about 60 million altogether. So it's not that far off to what we paid. So, you know, he's developed a lot over the years, and I believe he's made a name for himself. So therefore, he should be, valued at a lot higher than what was presented yesterday. So if you can place a bid around 80, 85 million pounds, Liverpool will talk business. So let's see what happens with Diaz. I don't expect him to stay, if I'm being honest with you. But if that is the case, let's keep the ball rolling. If you want to move to a club to earn big bucks, then Al Nassr is the place to go. And I'm sure they'll try and conclude that deal sooner rather than later. Just got a comment here from Ozan Kabak, who says, imagine Hughes negotiates 100 million euros for Lucho, including add-ons. Honestly, Ozan, I think he could do it, especially if Al Nassr's in the mix. I think that would be the club that would be willing to spend that straight away. Bayern, on the other hand, it can't be ruled out because they were willing to spend that kind of range of money to sign a Rafael Leao not so long ago. But of course, he's decided to stay at AC Milan. Then they were linked to Gakpo out of all the players. They were willing to spend about 17 odd million for him. They also linked him with Toma as well. So they've always been in the market for a left winger in the last couple of months. And with the unfortunate injury to Musiala, they need an attacker even more so now. So, Richard Hughes, you know, has that mafia energy right now. He's showing who's boss. And I feel like he could get the deal done. And I think it will be around that kind of range. Whether it's with Bayern or Al Nassr, it remains to be seen. But I do feel like we can get the deal done. And hopefully, that money can be used on signing his replacement. And that potential replacement, who's someone that we spoke about yesterday, is Rodrygo. Now, the current rumor in regards to Rodrygo is that apparently Liverpool want to sign Rodrygo, and Rodrygo is also very keen on the move to Anfield. So, my thoughts on this sort of latest development, I think it's all paper talk, to be fair. I think Liverpool have probably shortlisted Rodrygo as a potential target to replace Luis Díaz, but I don't think, it's something where, don't expect a bid to happen in the next few days. Diaz will need to be sold before we make a move going forward. So that's very, very important to understand. Now, is he a good fit for Liverpool? I have my opinion. I have my judgment on the player. I think he's a good player. I just don't think he's in that elite category as of yet. But having said that, if he was to join Liverpool, there's nothing to suggest that he can't reach that elite level that I'm referring to. So maybe he just needs that move where he's given the confidence and he's given the freedom to express himself, play in his favorite position, which is left wing, and showcase his talent to the world. So that could be, us being that club that helps him rediscover his sort of passion and his desire to be one of the best players in world football, and then he ends up showcasing the talent that some fans believe he possesses. So for me, he's definitely an option. I wouldn't say just because I don't rate him very highly, he's not a worthy option. I think he is. I probably have a different player in mind, which I've voiced in the past. I really like Bradley Barcola. That would be the player that I would want the club to go for. But if we go for Rodrigo, I wouldn't be disappointed. I'm just not as excited as I am with Isak or when we signed Florian Wirtz because I feel like those are the type of signs that are probably undoubtedly first choice for many players or many fans, I should say, for those positions. But he's an option out there that is available. The players like Barcola and Nico Williams, those players aren't available officially. So it looks like Rodrigo has had enough. He's not been favoured in recent weeks in the Club World Cup, so he's therefore looking to engineer a move away from the club. And I think he's got a high profile agent involved to try and get that deal done with another suitor. So let's see what happens. Liverpool definitely in the mix. I think Arsenal were in the mix previously, whether they are not now, I doubt because they're on the verge of signing Madueke for around 50 odd million. That news has definitely rattled a few feathers amongst the Arsenal fan base. But in terms of Liverpool, I feel like if Rodrigo is a genuine target, it could be the person that ends up replacing Luis Diaz. So feel free to let me know in the chat. Would that be the right replacement for Diaz that we signed Rodrigo? Or do you think maybe we should go and target a different type of player? Or maybe we get Ekitike and he ends up playing left wing. Feel free to let me know in the chat. Now, on to the next rumor. And it's Marcus Rashford. I don't even know why I'm speaking about it, but we've got to speak on these things that that are presented in the media outlets. And there's a shocking rumor that is linking Liverpool with Marcus Rashford. And apparently, Liverpool are exploring different striker options in case we're not able to sign Alexander Isak. And apparently, Rashford is one of the names on that list. Now, my sort of initial thoughts when I saw this news on Sky Sports was that, come on, Sky Sports, stop trolling. Honestly, Rashford to Liverpool would never happen. He might not be a popular figure at United because he was sent out on loan. The manager doesn't really favour him, and the fans I feel like might be. a bit fed up with him. But there's no way that this move would ever materialize. It's just too much on the line. Uh, the affiliation of United with Rashford, despite the current situation, he won't move over to their faces rivals in Liverpool. And in regards to Rashford, it's a shame how his career is kind of planned out. I was speaking to one of my friends, Big Up T, and we were speaking about how his career has gone downhill in recent years because when he broke into the United team, let's say this out loud. He was a striker in the youth team, so this notion that he's not a striker, that is the position he grew up playing within the United academy, and made a name for himself. Then he started playing on the right side at times. Then he shifted over to the left wing. The left wing position seemed to be, something that he made his own at United. And I remember there used to be debates, with combined 11s when we had Mane, Firmino, and Salah. And some people would debate Rashford and Mane, but also put Firmino out of the picture and say Rashford would be the striker in our team. I never agreed with that, but I kind of saw it as an interesting debate because Rashford was showing good promise during that time, but he's just not delivered. And it could be a combination of things. It could be where United are renowned for giving crazy salaries to their young players. And when you're a young player and you receive a crazy amount that you probably never even dreamt of ever receiving, it changes your way of thinking, it changes the way you move in life. You start buying things that you thought would never be possible. So you lose that hunger straight away. You end up buying all these cars and houses and you're partying and you're doing all of this and that, but you're losing the sole focus that got you there, and that is to be a professional and to play, football at the highest level. And I feel like along that journey, maybe he's lost that passion for the game a little bit. Um, United, of course, are not a club in a great position off the pitch and on the pitch. So that's definitely impacted his role in the team. And maybe there's been too much pressure on him as well from the United fan base where they expected too much from him because he's a local lad and all that sort of stuff. And maybe it was just unreasonable for him to hit those heights, when the team are so below par as well. So it's unfortunate in terms of what's happened to Rashford, but for, even to say out loud that Liverpool are in the mix to try and sign him, for me, is complete BS. There's no truth in that whatsoever. Complete paper talk. Sky Sports just trying to get as many views on their YouTube channel or they're broadcasting um programs on the channel. But yeah, there is no truth in this room whatsoever. So let's see what happens with Rashford. He might still have a future in the league. He might end up moving abroad. Only time will tell. But I don't think he is a target for Liverpool. Just got a couple of comments here from Ozan Kabak. He says, "I'm 1000% certain that even Rashford doesn't want to come to the Anfield. He wouldn't. He's too much of a beloved Manchester United fan that he would never consider joining Liverpool. Like, think of it. If one of our players was linked to United, they wouldn't consider going there. Ask Curtis Jones, would he want to move to Manchester United? I don't think it will come to his mind. So no, I very, very much, doubt that there's any truth or any weight to the story. For me, it's complete BS. Your second comment is, Ozzy, did you hear about Lamine Yamal paying for OnlyFans models to attend his 18th birthday party? Yeah, I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff about that, where he hired dwarfs as well to be part of the party celebrations. Honestly, we were literally just speaking about Rashford, where he was given too much, you know, so young. I hope that Lamine Yamal doesn't fall into that trap because he's got the world on his shoulder right now. He's the guy at Barcelona, despite being 16, 17, well, of course, 18 now, 18th birthday, 18 years of age, and everyone knows who you are. You're in that limelight where you're the next big thing. You're going to run football going forward. I really, really hope this is not a situation where, because of the wealth he's got now, the fame and you know all this sort of outside noise, I hope it doesn't affect his game going forward. I hope he stays focused on his career and doesn't get distracted by people outside of football or things that aren't important, in this day and age, because he is an unbelievable talent. He really is. And I don't want it to be where he ends up being, one of those players that, we forget about in years to come, or the streets won't forget. Like, you don't want to be put in that kind of category. I want him to be spoken about in the same light as Messi has been over the years. Like, he's the guy, he's one of the best, generational talent. Like, that's the kind of notion that I want to hear in regards to Lamine Yamal. So I really hope the people around him are sensible and are guiding him the right way and not giving him ill advice or being yes men and just accepting whatever the kid says because he's a kid. He's 18 years of age. He doesn't know better. So there needs to be, people that will help shape his life and career into the right path. Hopefully his dad. I've seen, clips, not clips, but I've seen like pictures of his dad, and he doesn't seem to be, the wisest of influences. But being a dad, you've got to still put your son in check and say, look, this is your career. You're living your dream. You're playing for Barcelona. You're the main guy at Barcelona. You're regarded as one of the best players in world football right now at your tender age. Don't blow it. Make sure you fulfill your dreams and make sure you leave a legacy behind. Don't be one of those players where you've had a good spells in your early ages and then you end up being forgotten about, and then your career fizzles out, and then 5, 10 years down the line, we've forgotten about you. Don't want to be within that bracket. So hopefully he has some wise people around him within his camp. But yeah, seeing the stuff I saw about the birthday party, I was like, yeah, this kid's losing the plot, man. Someone needs to take him to one side. One of the elders needs to speak to him because that's just wild. But it is what it is. Unfortunately, that's the way things are. Especially when you're young and you're famous, get distracted by that sort of stuff. What was that about? I said, "What dwarves?" Kid you not. If I can find some clips, um, do you know what? Let me see if I can find something on Twitter quickly. If it's a video, I can't upload it, but if it's an image, then I'll definitely share it because I saw a video of a bus arriving at the venue that it was that was holding the birthday party, and the elves did not look very pleased about the arrangement. So God knows what they, were- they were asked to do at the party. But yeah, we live in a crazy world. That's for sure. I have a picture, so let me bring it up on the screen for you guys, and then yeah, you can see for yourself. Let's bring it up on here. So hopefully you guys can see that. So these are the dwarfs that were hired to perform at his birthday party. I don't know what kind of performance it was, but look at this is wild. There's like a minibus right there full of dwarfs, and they're not happily or they're not very pleased about being photographed in that moment there. But yeah, it's wild. It's wild, honestly. The, the world is a crazy place, to say this, when an 18-year-old is getting giggles and kicks out of hiring dwarves as part of his party celebrations. So, yeah, the world's gone crazy, but it is what it is. I was gonna come back, can't believe it. Yep, I've got pictures there. There's actually videos of them, walking into the venue, but I think the picture paints the 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 scenario for us in 4K, I guess. Why are they in the forest? I think it's where the venue is. It's just in a very sort of outskirt place where there's not too much around them. It's not in the city. is in the middle of the woods. It's a big venue, so that's where um he's pretty much booked his birthday party, I guess. So yeah, crazy situation. Um, Daz with the comment says, Aussie, when will our three new boys find out their team numbers? So the current situation is that because we're still under contract with Nike, we can't formally make any changes to the squad, i.e., players, current players can't change their numbers right now, and new players can't, decide what numbers they want to take. Once the Adidas deal is in place, which I think should be happening very soon, actually, that's when official shirt numbers will be presented. In regards to some of the players, maybe they're holding out for certain numbers, like Florian Wirtz, for example. He might want that number 7 that Diaz is currently holding, so maybe that's why hasn't decided. Um, and it goes the same with Kirkers and Frimpong as well. I think Frimpong decided that he wanted number 30, but he'll officially get that number once the Adidas deal is in place. So we're just waiting for that official announcement. Let me see if there's a date that's out there, because I thought it was definitely in July, mid-July, but we're 17th July today. So um, we should hear some uh, development, I guess. Have a look. It's going to be end of July. So officially, August the 1st is when everything will be unveiled. So that would include the home kit, all of the kits, to be fair, will be unveiled from there onwards. And then the team will start wearing, Adidas gear in the training facilities and all that sort of stuff. So August the 1st. So we've got a couple of weeks until we are officially sponsored by Adidas. And that's when we'll get further news in regards to shirt numbers as well. Um, Paul Gold, big up yourself. He says Isak and Ikitike fire Newcastle United to the title. Wow. Okay. Um, and then Delulu Steve pretty much was quick to respond. Said, "In your dreams, Paul." Yeah, I think that's a little bit far fetched to suggest that. Firstly, Isak and Ekitike will be at the club together, because I don't think that's a possibility. If that is a possibility, let's say that is a scenario which, let's be honest, you can't rule out. You're going to have to sell someone, and it could be Anthony Gordon, which I don't think you'll be too displeased about. Feel free to let me know in the chat. But from a Liverpool fan point of view, that's not the player I want. I want Isak. So, if we were to buy Anthony Gordon, I'd be quite disappointed. And if you were able to keep Isak and have Ekitike, then yeah, I don't think it'll fire you to the title, but you'll definitely be challenging for the top four. In my opinion, you'll be closer than what most teams will probably present. Also, it depends on who you sign and your centre back position. I know you linked with Salvini, who's a very, very good young centre back. Question marks in terms of his adaptability to the Premier League, because he's not the quickest of defenders, despite being a young player. But his reading of the game is definitely beyond his years. So very interesting profile. So let's see what happens in terms of Newcastle. But I very highly doubt that Ekitike and Isak will be the strike force at Newcastle. I think it'll be one or the other. You either keep Isak, or you sell Isak to us and then you get Ekitike. It's one way or the other. I don't see where neither team has both of those players, because right now, because we've pretty much made approaches for two strikers, you can't rule out us trying to sign both players. The only difference between Liverpool and Newcastle is that we can actually afford it. We don't break any PSR rules. We can actually do it within our guidelines. So only time will tell. So we'll see what happens. But I'm very certain that we'll get some sort of update in the coming days. Um, Kingston, how Newcastle play hardball? He is a Newcastle player. The reason why I say they're playing hardball is because Newcastle aren't being very clear in terms of their stance about Alexander Isak. Is he for sale or is he available? They're giving different vibes to the media outlet, where they're saying that, oh, he's not for sale. But then 2 minutes later, you're saying, "Oh, if someone bids 150 million, we'll consider it." So which one is it? Is he for sale or is he available? So that's why I'm saying you guys are playing hardball because you're not being decisive. If he's not for sale, Newcastle will have rejected any sort of approach from Liverpool. We wouldn't be having this discussion right now. But because they haven't ruled it out, it just puts that up in the air that maybe there's a possibility that a deal can be negotiated, or a deal can be done between the two clubs, especially as you're already trying to sign Ekitike, who is probably regarded as a replacement for Isak anyway. So that's where the hardball context comes into it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't feel like neither fan bases can speak with too much chest, but Newcastle fans are showing a lot of chest, which is confusing me a little bit because I don't know where that chest is coming from. And to suggest that Ekitike and Isak will fly to the tower for me, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But everyone is entitled to their opinion. And Paul with the comment says your first and second striker choices will be playing on the time. Let's see. Let's see how it goes. But please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because we will be talking about Isak and Ekitike as time goes on. And look, use these shows as receipts if you want to. Um, but make sure to join the shows once we get more official news. If Isak comes through the door, I expect you to come into the live chat and, have a discussion with us as well. So this is an open platform, so you will be invited, of course. Um, it's because they beat us at Wembley Oz. Yeah, but it's a final. These things happen. So just because you beat us in a cup final doesn't mean you are better than us, like all the way around. It doesn't. Football does not work like that. Are Chelsea better than PSG? No, they just performed better on the day. They were the better team and deserved to win the Club World Cup. So just because of a one-off game, you can't say that they are better than us. Look at the league table. Where did we finish and where did they? So, but I get your point, Steve. You are right. That's probably where the energy is coming from. But we're the Premier League champions. We're the ones that are going to attract that type of player where they might be very settled in their current situation, but when the champions come calling, you go revisit, you go assess the situation even further, which is what Newcastle should be doing now when Liverpool plays that bid of 120 million, because that's a groundbreaking offer there. That's not an offer you're going to get all the time. It's an offer that Newcastle may not ever get for another player. That 120 million pound would do wonders for Newcastle. They'll be able to get Ekitike through the door, plus they'll be able to sign a centre back, maybe even two centre backs with that money, and really solidify their back line. And going forward, they can obviously challenge for the top four with that kind of squad. So only time will tell. You know, right now, no one's got any sort of official news. We're just waiting on, you know, the strong sources like your Romanos and your Onsteins to give us breaking news. And they're presenting the news. And right now, it looks like it's in favor of Liverpool because the news is that Isak is open to the move to Liverpool, and Newcastle haven't rejected any approaches from Liverpool. And on the flip side, they've had a bid rejected for Ekitike, but we've contacted Frankfurt and said, look, we'll match or bid higher than what Newcastle are offering. So we're willing to spend money to get Ekitike. So either way, we're going to get a striker. That's how I'm looking at it. So I'll only time will tell to see which striker walks through the door. Paul with the comment says Isak already looking forward to playing together with Ekitike. Where have you heard that? Feel free to let me know in the chat. Delisi said they think one Carabao makes them a big club. Each their own, I guess. Kenny says Isak will not go to Liverpool this window. He will go from hero to zero as will the board. They would be an insane outrage. That would be interesting. Would it be that kind of reaction from the fan base if Isak decided to leave? That's why I feel like Newcastle are trying to play a bit smart, where they're finding the replacement Ekitike to calm the storm a little bit, if that makes sense. But you're Newcastle fans. Feel free to let me know. Would there be a crazy outrage if that was the case? Paul with the comment says Newcastle 9 needs to be a big signing. Let me ask yourself, Paul and Kenny, if Isak was to be sold and join Liverpool, would you be happy with Ekitike as your replacement, or would you want someone of a higher profile? You've said a big signing, so who would you regard as a big signing if that situation was to happen? Uh, just got a comment here from Lominos. Because so he says, mate, do you think Mike Ashley is running our club? What kind of threat is give us Isak or we take Ekitike? Go ahead, take him. Oh, shiver me timbers. I would rather keep Isak. He still has 3 more years. Yeah, appreciate your comment there. Um, look, we'll see what happens at the end of the window, because you will be shivering your timbers when we do have Isak in our team. That's how I'm seeing it. Because right now, it looks like the signs are that Liverpool are going to make an approach for Isak. And right now, it doesn't look like Newcastle will reject the offer. They might want to do business there. You've had PSR issues. You were close to selling Anthony Gordon last year. For me, thank God that didn't happen, because he's a player that I don't want to see at Liverpool. With 120 million in the bank, you're able to reinvest into the squad and really strengthen the squad going forward. You're in the Champions League next year, so that is something that you have to think about going forward. Right now, you don't have the squad to challenge 4 different titles right now. So let's see. Let's see what happens. Um, Delulu Steve says, mate, don't believe everything you read on social media. 100%. Always take it with a pinch of salt. Uh, Bertie D. Bob says he's getting a massive contract. If he does, they got to be 350k a week. For who? Isak. Is that with Newcastle or Liverpool? Because with Liverpool, I don't think we'd offer him 350. I think we'd offer around 200, that kind of range. It wouldn't be 350. But if you're speaking as a Newcastle fan, because I'm not sure, I feel like this is the first time you've made a comment here. If you return from Newcastle, there's no way Newcastle can afford that. 150 is what I heard Newcastle were willing to offer him, and the s- the current rumor is that he's not interested. They've ended negotiations in regards to a contract extension. Of course, like the fan mentioned earlier on, he's got 3 years on his contract right now, which is a fact. So he still has a good value in terms of his sort of stock in the market. And I feel like it's one of those things where Liverpool will need to test the waters and see if Newcastle are willing to budge. If they're not, we'll have to move on to different targets, and it might not be in their primary target. Kenny says no, he's not the finished article. Isak is, but in this scenario, let's say Isak ends up leaving and joins Liverpool. Who would you want? Because you'll know for a fact that when the Saudis took over the club, Ekitike was your prime target. Then that was a player that you really wanted. You guys actually agreed terms, from what I remember, but he made that decision to join PSG instead. He wanted to stay in France. He wanted to play for one of the biggest teams in the country. So he went and made his move over there. So there's always been a liking towards the player. There's always been interest in the player. So I don't feel like that has changed. So I think Ekitike would actually be a good signing for Newcastle if Isak was there. There's no one out there, in my opinion, stylistically, that is similar to Isak. I think Ekitike is quite close in terms of how they play. He might not be a prolific striker right now, but I feel like he has the tools to become that player in the near future. And I'm not even talking that far ahead. I think he has the capability to do so. So it's going to be interesting for both clubs. Where do we stand, or where do we finish? Which striker goes where? All I know is Liverpool need a striker, and those are the 2 players that we've shortlisted. And Newcastle look like that they're trying to keep hold of their prize asset and maybe add more to the squad. So only time will tell in terms of what happens in the end. Lamino says Eddie Howe is not gonna rely on youngster like Ekitike. Even when we signed Isak, we had Callum Wilson as a starter. We don't have a backup striker now, and we don't have FFP. We saw Longstaff today. I didn't know that was official. So yes, I know he was linked with a move to Leeds United, but it wouldn't have been for a big transfer fee, I don't think. In terms of, you know, classifying Ekitike as a youngster, he's a young striker, yes he is, but he's a lot more further down the development. Like he is, in my opinion, ready to join a team and be the talisman of a team. Like he has that capability. The only question is, can he do it in the Premier League? Because it's a different ball game. He's coming from the Bundesliga where it's not played to the same magnitude. So can he, replicate that form he showed at Frankfurt last season and do it in the English Premier League? That's the big question there. In terms of what he brings to the table, he's a quality striker. But you also have to look at the market as well, because this has been a regular discussion amongst us Liverpool fans. The striker market is very poor right now. There aren't many options out there. If it's not Ekitike, maybe another option for Newcastle would be a Sesko, for example. Osimhen is available. Would that be the type of striker you'd want at your club? Um, Gyökeres is on the verge of signing for Arsenal. There's not many options out there. So for me, you know, you mentioned Isak was signed and then Wilson was the starter. I think on paper that might have been the case, but the vision was always for Isak to be the number one guy because he had great potential to become a top striker, and he's actually fulfilled it right now. So I always thought they envisioned him to be the main guy. It's just that when you sign a young striker, you don't want to put too much pressure on them to deliver, because if they fall short slightly, then the fans are on his case and there's suggesting that he's not good enough. So then the notion changes towards the player a little bit. So that was managed very well by Newcastle, where the expectation wasn't very high on Isak to be a success. But once he found his stride and once he found his form and started banging in the goals, the football was doing the talking for him. So, let's see what happens with Isak in the end. But it says he'd get a Paul 350. I think he wouldn't get that. I think that'd be crazy amount. Um, I can see it being 250, 350K. Seems like a lot, to be fair. But let's see. Let's see what happens. Zulu Steve said we don't have FFP concerns either. Let's compare your global revenues with ours. That's another big talking point as well. We could actually go and buy Isak and Ekitike and not breach any FFP rules, and probably still buy another player like a Gay on top of that as well. Because we haven't spent a lot of money in the last 2 3 years, we've only spent 325 million, including the vert still. So that shows you our expenditure. We haven't spent big. We haven't spent much in the last 2 3 years. So we are in a room to spend a large amount of money across the pond, and that's how it is right now. So that's why it's a very exciting time to be a Liverpool fan, because we're making big moves. We're trying to acquire the creme de la creme, the top players in Europe right now. So only time will tell in terms of which striker ends up walking through the door. Paul says we need one striker. If Isak left, it would be two. Good strikers are not easy to find. Isak and Ekitike together change football. Me personally, I don't think they would form a partnership. They're very similar in terms of how they play. Just seen Ozak's comment. It's time to get the yeah. Do you know what? I just clocked that as well. Uh, let me bring back some football context to the screen now. But in terms of your comment there, I don't think that they would form a good partnership. And look, I'm not just saying that because I'm thinking about Newcastle now. Even at Liverpool, I mentioned this earlier in the show. I don't think they would present a good balance as a strike force, because they're very similar. The only thing is Ekitike does like to drop deep, so maybe it could work. Or Ekitike plays slightly wider. So you can't completely rule it out, but I think on paper, I don't know if it has the right balance, but that's just my opinion. Um, and in terms of you suggesting that you need a second striker, I know Callum Wilson is a free agent now. There's been rumors that you guys are linked with Calvert-Lewin to come in to replace him as the backup striker in your squad as well. So probably not the player that you're after, but that is the current rumor circulating right now. Lamino says Isak is on 120k. Why would we offer 150k? Well, that was the offer that was given to him in terms of his contract extensions. That's the reason why I mentioned that number, and that would have made him the highest paid player at Newcastle. So if that's the case, then he probably has a reason why he wants to move on because that probably doesn't meet his requirements either. But this is come on, he's gonna get offered around 250k at Liverpool. Yeah, that's what I said. 250k is the ball mark. 150 is what Newcastle had offered. I don't think that's what we would give him. We'd give him a lot more of a pay rise in comparison. I think 250k would be the right amount. And he says, I don't see us selling Isak this season. Uh, when can still selling for same price next year while we develop Ekitike? You say that, but let's say the deal doesn't happen between Isak and Liverpool and Isak really wanted to go and switch clubs, you basically held a player not against their will, but you've annoyed him a little bit, so he might be demotivated coming to into the next season, and he might not deliver or he might not hit the heights that he did last season, and because of that, valuation drops automatically. 1 year less of his contract will be 2 years next year. Bad season in this kind of scenario. It could be where we come back and then we offer less money. So that's something that needs to be assessed by Newcastle because there's no guarantee that a team would offer 120 million again next season. I'll give you a prime example. Mohamed Kudus, when he broke into the West Ham team, or when he joined West Ham, sorry, he had a great season. And there was already talks that, they've got a release clause of 80, 90 million for next year. He's joined Spurs for 50 million because he had a poor season last year for West Ham. So that could easily happen to Ekitike. I'm not wishing that, I'm not saying it will, but it's not a scenario that you can't rule out. So if the player, which if you believe the rumor is that he wants to join Liverpool, that is his desire right now. And if you don't allow him to move on after what he's given to you over the years, he might be disgruntled. He might not, play with the ultimate passion or ultimate drive to help the team going forward. He might just be a shadow of himself. You never know. It's happened in football. This is why I'm mentioning it out loud. You can't rule that sort of thing happening next season. So Newcastle definitely need to think very wisely because this offer is a huge amount of money. It could be, club. It could be life changing for the club. Let's be brutally honest. Kenny says Ekitike will learn from Isak and how, in my opinion. Yeah, but why would Ekitike join a club being backup? What would be the appeal for him to be a backup striker? He would better off stay at Frankfurt for another season, be the main guy there, continue his development, and then next year find that move at another club. What's the appeal of him joining Newcastle as a backup striker? I don't think there is. So I don't think that makes sense at all. Bertie D Bob says so they're turning down a British record bid, then say here is 200k a week. Can't see it. 80k rise. Yeah, but I don't think salary is going to be an issue. It can be 250k. For me, that's not the difficult situation here. The situation is Newcastle stance. Are you selling him or not? That's what we're waiting on. The club will pay 250k on him. I don't think it'll be 350. I think that's a bit too high. Because obviously we've got to manage our finances. We've just signed Florian Wirtz. He's probably on a big salary as well. Salah and Van Dijk, we gave them contract extensions. They're on bigger salaries in comparison to what they were earning last year. So, you know, I'm not accounting. So for me, as long as we get the player, that's all I care about. Yeah, So we'll see what happens in the future. Uh, Kane says, let's be honest here. Liverpool don't want Ekitike, and you know it. No, we do. We have had interest in Ekitike. We've been speaking about Ekitike for weeks. He's been a player that we've been linked with for at least a couple of months now. So he's always been earmarked as a potential target amongst the fan base. We're not sure, just like you probably are amongst the Newcastle fan base, where would he come in and be a prolific striker? That's the only question mark. Can he hit the ground running coming into the Premier League? But he's been one of our main targets. He before this news around Isak and Ekitike, he's been one of our main targets for weeks. It's just that we've got a pecking order. Isak is our number one target, and then it goes down to Ekitike. That is literally how it's always been. You know, I've presented names in the past like your Julian Alvarez, but he's not available. Osimhen, God knows what's happening with him, but I don't feel like he's a Liverpool target now. Eucharist is going to Arsenal, and then it's Ekitike. So I would have gone for those experience options before Ekitike, but I think from the club's point of view, it was Isak or Ekitike. That is the pecking order. So hopefully Liverpool can get that done. Paul's asking, who is your third and fourth choice? I don't know the situation about Osimhen, but I'd probably put him as the third choice. Fourth choice. Now I'm going to show you the levels that it's going down and down because, and this is not disrespect to the player that I'm going to mention as the fourth choice, but the striker market is not the best at all. I'd probably go for Mateta as the fourth choice. Some fans will disagree and say, what about Sesko? I'm not a fan of Sesko. I feel like he's very raw. I don't feel like he's as good as what people make out. And I feel like he just gets that Haaland comparison because when Haaland left to join Dortmund, sorry, he was a striker that took over at Red Bull Salzburg. So they're trying to build that connection that he's the baby Haaland. He's not. He's not. So yeah, that'd be my pecking order. Mateta would be the stopgap signing because I don't think there's anyone else out there in world football. Um, but yeah, let's see. Already mentioned Ozan Kabak's comment there. LFC 20 TV, so it says true, we want Isak. LOL. Sissy Bryce says we are a big club. Uh, Paul says Calvert Lewis, Liverpool's third choice. Never in a million years. He's not even a choice. I'll be a choice ahead of Calvert Lewin, that's for sure. Delulu Steve says we also have the third and fourth highest bonus structure in the Prem Aussie. We can over massive incentives for winning certain trophies. Yep, that's how we are. We offer good base salaries, but we also offer great bonuses and incentives, and that's what helps with our team because our team has a motive to be successful, whether it's money oriented or to win trophies. You get both of the rewards. So that's how it should be. I feel like some players in this day and age, they're giving crazy salaries way too soon. Sancho, Rashford, Sterling, these type of players, they earn their money so quick, so young in their career. Unfortunately, their career right now is kind of fizzling out. So very sad to see, but that is how it is, unfortunately, nowadays. Lomino says, fact check, we didn't even offer Isak a contract extension yet. Please find me a reliable source. So people saying he rejected an offer is wild, and I trust Isak to keep his value for us to sell next year. The last part, yeah, if he has a good season, his value will remain. In terms of sources, I don't know if I can just bring it up right now from thin air, but that's been the talk of the town for the last couple of weeks. That they've had discussions, and it's not recent discussions. It's been discussions for about a couple of months, and recently he's basically ended any negotiations to sign a new contract. That's why the club are a bit unsure in terms of should they accept a bid from Liverpool or not. So, call it what you will, but Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano are reporting what the current situation is that Liverpool are willing to spend 120 million on the striker. Isak is open to the move. So that's the bullet point right now. That's what we're hearing. All this other stuff about Newcastle related stuff doesn't affect me because if he wants to join Liverpool and Newcastle reluctantly accept the bid, he's over to Liverpool. So that's how I'm seeing it right now. Kenny said it's all ifs and buts. We should all find out by the weekend. I agree. It is all ifs and buts right now. I believe we should get some clarification by end of this week. That would be my thinking right now. Um, and then yeah, we can discuss further. Kenny said Ekitike must know he is the second choice at Liverpool now. That might piss him off. So big up Ozan come out. He mentioned this to me yesterday. Why would Ekitike want to join Liverpool if he's being regarded as our second choice? And the way I see it is that when you've got a player that you want to sign, despite what is said in the media, you have to communicate differently to the player. So you have to sell the project to the player and basically say, look, you're the guy that we want. There's news about Isak, all that kind of jazz, but you're the future. You're the player that we envision as the main guy for us going forward. You're the young striker that's going to take this team going forward. So that's what we have to think, from a business point of view, they're going to sell the project in that kind of manner and make him feel like he's the guy, he's worth $1 million. And that is the job of Richard Hughes and his team to make that player feel like he's the guy. When we present the project to Florian Wirtz, he was blown away. That's why he's at the club right now. Vincent Company produced whatever PowerPoint presentation he did, it didn't work. So it's about communication, it's about how you make that player feel. And Arsenal, he might not be in club in terms of being a larger than life type of character, but he's very charismatic. In terms of his football philosophy, I think that will be presented to Ekitike, and I think that will win Ekitike over. So I don't have any, concerns if we do approach Ekitike. I don't feel like it's going to be a stumbling block to present that project to him. I think he'll be fully on board. I'm not just saying because we're big Liverpool. I feel like there is a vision that is pretty much evident right now that Liverpool are on the up. We are current Premier League champions. We are signing elite players right now. We are a team that are not to mess with right now. Not to sound cocky or arrogant, but we are challenging for all the honors right now. We are trying to act or trying to move like a big club, man. And finally, Liverpool fans have been waiting for this for a long time. We've broken our record of signing Florian Wirtz, a player that was a pipeline dream for many of us. I've never mentioned Florian Wirtz in any of my transfer shows because I never thought it was realistic. I thought he was either going to go to Bayern or he'll end up being the successor to Kevin De Bruyne at Man City. Liverpool was a situation I never thought we would have been even in the mix. But this winner showed me that anything is possible. And that's why I feel like I just have a feeling that we'll end up getting Isak. I don't mean to, be rude towards you because you're a Newcastle fan. That's just the vibe I'm getting. I had that same vibe with Verts and we end up signing him. I'm getting that same feeling as well. So only time will tell in terms of where Isak will be playing his football next season. LFC20 says, if for whatever reason we don't get Isak, why can't we take the second? Why can't we take the recorded bid and get Alvarez? That is a good question, LFC20, because in my picking order, Alvarez should be second, and that's the guy that some actually believe is more suited to the way we play in comparison to Isak. Liverpool should try and bid for Alvarez, but I think with Alvarez, though, there's a few stumbling blocks. So Atletico won't want to sell him so soon after 1 year. And if they do, they'd probably ask for more than 120 million, if I'm being honest. And then there comes a bit more of the human side of this transfer where he's moved over to Spain. So I think that's probably one of his desires for a South American player to move over and play their football in La Liga. In terms of lifestyle, of course, it being very similar to his upbringing and culture, it probably appeals to him to remain in Spain. And then we've also heard stories that his missus hated being in Manchester. and wanted to move away and move over to Spain. So, that's probably one of the reasons why there's no suggestion that we're going to move for him. Obviously, in the future, things can change, and it could be something on the cards, in years to come. But currently, it doesn't look like he's a realistic target or a possible target. So therefore, Liverpool have to explore and look for another alternative, and that alternative currently is Hugo Ekitike. So let's see what happens in regards to our next business. Andrew Wright, big up Andrew Wright. He says Liverpool moving mad. Rodrygo, Isak, or Ekitike, Salah, and Verts. We are moving mad. Adding Rodrygo to that mix and Isak alongside Ekitike. Oh wait, hold on. So you've asked Rodrygo, Isak, or Ekitike, Salah, and Verts. Well, Salah and Verts are Liverpool players, so for me, it's Rodrygo and Isak all day long. But imagine Isak, Rodrygo in our team with Salah, Verts, Gakpo, Szoboszlai. Not many teams can match that. So Liverpool fans are dreaming right now, but hopefully that dream could become a reality soon. Andrew says Ekitike only wants Liverpool, not Newcastle, to sit bench. Well, that's the question I presented earlier on. What's the appeal for him to go to Newcastle and be the second choice to Isak? Newcastle fans will say, "Oh, he can learn from him," but why would you want to learn from him? If he came to Liverpool, he will actually be number one striker. He's not learning from anyone. He ain't learning from Darwin Núñez because Darwin Núñez is leaving, and we don't have any other striker in our squad. So he will be the main guy in our team. So what would you do? Would you want to go to Newcastle to learn off Isak, or do you want to go to the Premier League champions in Liverpool and become their main striker? I think the answer is quite clear. Um, Ozan Kabak says Ozzy had a perfect sales pitch for Hugo. For Hugo, don't worry. Appreciate you, Ozan Kabak. Thank you for your comment there. Andrew says Alvarez doesn't want to leave Spain. So yeah, so that's what I meant in terms of the human side. He doesn't want to leave, unfortunately. So you've got to accept that it's not FIFA. We're not playing a computer game here. People have lives, they have families. So if it doesn't appeal to him to return to England, then you have to respect it as well. LSC 20 says, thought it was more the club not wanting to sell. Is that in regards to Newcastle? I don't know. We're not getting a clear indication because if Newcastle were like, we do not want to sell Isak, that would have been rejected a long time ago, and then we would just be like, fine, we're gonna have to move on to another target. But right now, we're still uncertain. We're willing to spend 120 million on Isak, but because we're not hearing any movement from that discussion, and we know they're targeting Ekitike. We know they're in discussion with Ekitike. We have to make a move and make two bids. And Newcastle might be bluffing in this regards where they may be expecting Isak to leave at some point, but they're trying to sign Ekitike as their replacement. So seems like games are being played right now. We don't know, what's going on. But as we mentioned earlier on, we'll get some clarity, I guess, at some point this week, in my opinion. Andrew says Alvarez wants Barcelona. Really? Barcelona can't afford anyone right now, so that's not going to happen. Andrew says basically Ekitike or Isak. I think so. I think for Liverpool, it's one or the other. I don't think we'll sign both. I don't think that's realistic. We can financially, as in we can't. As in, I'm not saying we can't afford it. We can, but I don't think that's the plan. I don't think that's what Liverpool wanted to do. It's one or the other, and then I was gonna say if, but I think when Luis Díaz leaves, then we'll find his replacement, and we'll add another centre back to our squad to replace Kwanzaa, which will most likely be Gay. And maybe I'm being greedy here. I'd like to add a midfielder, and then that completes our summer. But the Gay one might be the last deal, and then that ends it. And I would be quite happy with that. To be fair, I think it'd probably be one of our best transfer windows. Forget recent history in history altogether. So that's how much I'm rating uh, the business that Liverpool are doing. And got to shout out Richard Hughes. He's making moves right now, so he deserves all the respect at the moment. Delirious Steve says, "What's your gut feeling, Oz? Do we sign Isak? Yes or no?" My gut feeling, Delirious Steve. I've been saying for weeks. I have a feeling we will sign him. It might not be a quick resolution, but I do feel like in this window we will sign Isak. That's just my gut feeling. It's the same feeling I had when we were linked with Verts and we were hearing, you know, stories about Bayern and Man City. But once the days had gone on and we heard further developments about Verts, meaning on a slot and being wowed by the project. I just got that positive vibe. So I want to put my head out and say yes. I think we will sign Isak in this window. Kieran Brinkman. So Kieran says, "Hi. Why are Barcelona interested in Diaz when they don't have money?" That's how that's how Barcelona move. They don't have money. They just got credit cards and they go through the overdraft and buy whoever they want because they're backed by the royal family in Spain. So things get swept under the carpet, and that's how it is over there. So unfortunately, that is the way things are there, and they've been doing that for a long time, which is annoying. But there's nothing much we can do in regards to that. In terms of the interest in Diaz, it goes both ways. So Deco, who's the sporting director at Barcelona, is a big fan of Luis Diaz, and he's been wanting him for a couple of years now. So that's a player that they would like to sign. But then I look at the squad, where would he fit? Because Rafinha had one of his best seasons in his career to date. You're not going to displace Rafinha. You're definitely not displacing Yamal. Having dwarfs in his party or whatnot doesn't matter. On the pitch, he is elite. So that's not going to change. So signing Diaz doesn't even make sense from a Barcelona point of view. In terms of Diaz, that's been his dream. He wants to play for Barcelona. That's a dream that most South American players hold. It's either Barcelona or Real Madrid. So that's his dream. That's his aspiration. His dad's been twerking about that for a number of years now. That's the dream that the family wants. That they want their son to move over to Barcelona. Will it happen? I doubt it. They're not in a position to finance that kind of deal. They're not in a position to register Diaz because of the number of players that they have in their squad. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. Andrew says, can we afford all big wages for all the squad? Rodrygo, Salah, Isak, and Vert. I think we can because of the players that we've sold. Trent was on a big salary, and I don't think Ping Pong is earning the same amount. So, also, just to put a bit of context into the old news, we haven't signed a lot of players over the years. So, the likes of Thiago, he was on a big salary. We never replaced him, so his salary is still pretty much in the basket there. And then Matip, we never replaced Matip either. So, Kwanzaa got the promotion, but his salary was the same. So, in that regards, yeah, there's definitely room to give these players the wages that they require. And of course, there's other players that will be departing as well. So the likes of Darwin Núñez, Luis Diaz, Harvey Elliott, maybe even Chiesa, who's on big salary as well. So that's already quite a few hundreds and hundreds of thousands available, and that should be enough to accommodate the players that you mentioned there. So Wirtz is done, so that's already a sealed deal. Salah's already got a new contract. Isak will probably earn 250K in my opinion. And Rodrigo, I don't know what he earns right now, so let me have a quick search. So we have an indication of what he might want to uh, demand if he was to become a Liverpool player. Uh, that could be a similar. So he currently earns around 200K a week at Real Madrid. So we can easily offer him 250K. I think that would be the sufficient amount to offer him. Um, but we'll also have to guarantee that he's a first team player as well. So let's see. Only time will tell, if Rodrigo is a target. Um, but the Isak one, I think we'll probably go all out because he is our primary target as well. Andrew, the comment says Diaz is going Bayern or Saudi 85 million bid soon. Yep, I see it being Saudi. I mentioned this yesterday on last night's show. I think he'll end up at Saudi, and I think we'll get the 85 million that we want. So hopefully that business can be done very soon. Andrew's also commenting saying they said Chiesa will be centre forward, probably back up. I don't know if that means Ben Dock stays. there's a lot of uncertainty because with Chiesa, it looked like he was destined to move over to Syria, and the kind of angle was that he wants to be in the World Cup squad for Italy next year. But the club that he was linked with, they no longer need a player of his position. So Napoli, they've signed Noah Long to be the left wing in their team. So that was the role that they wanted Chiesa to to take over from Kvaratskhelia, who of course was sold in January. AC Milan, they thought that they were going to lose Rafael Leao to Bayern, but he's actually decided to stay. So they don't need a new left winger from Chiesa's point of view there. And of course, unfortunately, due to Diego Jota's passing, it probably changes the outlook of the team where maybe one or two players that were expected to leave will be asked to stay for one more season in order to make sure that we have the right amount of numbers and quality within the squad. So Ben Dog, I don't know with Ben Dog, to be fair. It wouldn't be a crazy scenario to keep him for another season because I do feel like he's had a good long spell at Middlesbrough, so he's ready to be part of the first team mix. And I'd probably label him as our sixth choice attacker, which isn't too crazy, but it would depend on him. What's his desire? Does he feel like he's good enough to play for another Premier League team? Because he might feel like that. He probably thought he did so well at Middlesbrough that he's ready to step up and play for a Premier League side. So it depends on him. And there is interest in the player. Palace were very close to signing him in January. They showed the interest. I think they wanted to bid around £25 million. Liverpool are looking at around 30 and will accept any offer around that region. So if that is the case, then he'll probably end up leaving. Uh, I think Chiesa will stay, if I'm being honest with you. But the other question is Harvey Elliott. Does he stay or does he go? I would love for him to stay for another year. Um, whether it happens or not remains to because I feel like he would be a great understudy for Salah. Chiesa could be the backup striker for Isak. Dream scenario there. And then in terms of your left wing, you've got Gakpo, and then maybe you sign a Rodrygo as well. And then you've got Verts and Sabozlai. You've got all those positions covered. So for me, that would be the dream scenario. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen. Comment here from Ozan Kamai says the following players are going to be sold, in my opinion. Darwin Nunes, I agree. Diaz, I agree. Elliot, a few weeks ago, I probably would agree. I'm thinking maybe he stays now, but I'm not too sure. But I get your point there. Robertson, I think he'll probably stay for the remainder of this season, and then he'll leave on a free transfer next year. Not the way I want the club to move, but I think that will be, their way of just letting him, you know, run out his contract and leaving on his terms, if that makes sense. So I think Robertson will stay. I think Chiesa will end up staying now, to be fair. Tyler Morton will leave. Reece Williams, if anyone wants to buy him, please um, place a bid very soon. Bajtic. Bash is an interesting one. He's currently injured right now. I have a feeling he might be sold. I agree with you on that one. I think he will be sold to a team in La Liga because he's had such a great loan spell there. They're already calling him the next Busquets and all kinds of crazy labels like that. So if they rate him that highly, then I can see a move going there. I think I can see him going for like 20-25 million, that kind of range. Um, so yeah, I can see him leaving, and I think I can see Ben Dock leaving as well. If Ben Dock stays, I wouldn't be too mad about it because he does offer width and pace on that right hand side. But because of his great performance for Middlesbrough last season, it puts us in a good position to sell him where the stock is high on him currently. So yeah, most of the players I agree. I think Robertson will end up staying. Elliot, I'm a bit 50-50, and I think Chiesa will stay. And I agree with the rest. I think they will be sold. So enough money, as you mentioned, a lot of revenue still to come. Exactly. So revenue still to come to buy other players, and in terms of the wage structure and the salaries for new players, got enough in the bank to accommodate that as well. So Liverpool know what they're doing. We're working right now. And Andrew Wright said no one wants him. Is that in regards to Reece Williams? Yeah, I guess not. So we might just release him then. Um, and you said who plays right wing December to January? Oh, is that in regards to AFCON? AFCON doesn't start in December though. It starts in January, and it'll probably run until I think early January, um, to late Jan or early Feb. So it'll be within that sort of. Oh no, you're right. I'm just having a look at the fixture. So it starts from the 21st of December, and yeah, it will conclude on 18th of January. So it depends who we sign, Andrew. If we sign Rodrygo, Rodrygo can play right wing. If Chiesa stays, Chiesa can play right wing. If Elliott stays, he can play right wing. So a lot of players, if Diaz stays, I doubt he will, but let me just paint. Diaz can play right wing as well. Worst case scenario, you could put even Szoboszlai on the right wing. He's played there for Red Bull Leipzig, so we have enough options now to weather the storm when Salah goes over to AFCON. We have enough players, in my opinion. Frimpong, he's another option for the right wing position. So play Bradley at right back and play Frimpong right wing. We've got a lot of options there now. I know that used to be a big topic a few years ago. Now we've got plenty of options. We should be fine whenever Salah is unavailable. So I think we've got enough quality in the squad. Um, and Andrew White says Chiesa. Yeah, Chiesa is definitely an option for that position. Um, let's move on to a couple of other rumors that were circulating today. I mentioned the Rashford wing, the story where we're currently looking at a list of potential strikers that we can sign from the Premier League. Ollie Watkins is another name that has been earmarked as a potential target. Um, now, big question: would I accept Ollie Watkins as a stopgap signing? Honestly, I would. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a very talented player. He wasn't as explosive last season as he was in comparison to the previous season, but he's still a good striker in my opinion. Definitely a striker that knows, how to hit the back of the net. So for a stopgap signing, I wouldn't be mad at that one. So of course the price has to be right. It can't be a crazy amount. I think Arsenal were close to signing him in January for around £25 million. So if that's the range, I wouldn't be mad at that at all. Um, I would be open to taking Ollie Watkins as a stopgap signing. Of course, he's a lot older, but I do feel like he has the quality and he has the know-how to be a prolific goal scorer in the Premier League. So I would consider as an option. Is there any truth to the rumor? I don't think so. I think this is just paper talk. It could be where we're trying to make a list of potential strikers because we might be in the market for two strikers. We don't know. So it could be where we go for a top striker, like an Isak or an Ekitike. I'm going to put Ekitike in that bracket. And then we go for an experienced Premier League proven striker like a Watkins, like a Mateta, that kind of profile. So it could be that is the way that Liverpool are thinking right now. And another player that they could be, earmarking as a potential target is Yoane Wissa, a player that showed his true quality last year, scoring a lot of goals from a good partnership with Mbeumo. Mbeumo looks like he's set to leave, so I doubt Brentford would sell him as well because that would be suicidal at this stage of the window. But he's an interesting player. He would be a stopgap signing as well, and I think he's the type of player that would present a good option off the bench. He would be someone that uh, will utilize his pace. He's a good finisher, can finish with both feet. So he'd be a great option off the bench. So, if we were to sign an elite striker like Isak and then have a Wissa or Watkins or Mateta, I'm happy with that because you've covered the ground. You've got an established striker on the bench waiting to come on and have an impact. I'd rather be these guys than a young striker who's from an unknown league or you know moving players around, making them makeshift strikers. So I would rather assign, accomplished um, finisher into our team. I think that would make the most sense going forward. And just going to go through some of the comments before we close the show. Andrew says, I will take Palace as backup Palace striker. So you mean Mateta? I would as well. I think Mateta would be a fantastic backup signing. If we were to sign Isak as well, I think it'd be phenomenal. I think it'd be a great balance to our squad. I take him to how much is he? Wissa would probably cost around 25 million. I think Nottingham Forest placed a 20 million bid in January that got rejected. So I think 25, 30 at most. I think 30 would be a bit steep. So I'd go for 25. In terms of Mateta, I've heard the Palace are wanting around 40 to 50. I don't know if that. I think I wouldn't go as far as 40. 40 would be the maximum bid I'd go for Mateta, only because he's a stopgap signing, and we wouldn't sign him on a very long contract. It would be maybe for 2 or 3 years. So with that in mind, maybe a bid around 35, 40 million would be the right amount, but I wouldn't go higher than 40 million. So for me, good quality options there off the bench. So let's see what Liverpool do in the end. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another great show today. Lots of discussions. You know, I am a Liverpool content creator, but it's good to see other fans from other clubs getting involved and being part of the discussion. We're all respectable on the channel, so it's good to see other fans getting involved and having their say. It's an open community, so I really appreciate everyone's engagement. Just going to give a few shouts to everyone involved today. So, shout out to Diaz, shout out to Oz and Kabak, shout out to Luis Díaz, shout out to Bull Gold, shout out to Kenny, shout out to Laminos. Shout out to Bertie D Bob. Shout out to who else do we have? NFC 20. Shout out to Cecily Bryce. Shout out to Andrew Wright. Uh, and shout out to Kieran as well. Appreciate your engagement. Appreciate getting involved today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming content, if we get further development tomorrow, then expect another impromptu show around this time. Well, not 1 a.m., but around 11 p.m. UK time. If not, we'll do our weekly transfer talk show where we will discuss all the latest rumors that have been circulating in the last few days, and we'll discuss it openly together. And then we'll have some more content coming up next week. More transfer related, of course. Also, today I released my first members video, and the topic of the members video was Liverpool's best worst 11. So if you'd like to watch it, you have to join our membership. It is linked in the live chat. So if you want to have a look at the two packages available, feel free to do that. And then my goal for this upcoming season is to produce exclusive content for the members and try and do it on a more regular basis. So that's the first of many. If you have watched it or you're going to watch it, feel free to drop a comment, let me know what you think. And also, if you do join the membership, please let me know, what type of content you want to see, any suggestions that you have. I'm open and I'm all ears in regards to producing exclusive content for you guys. And as I mentioned previously in my other shows, every new member that I attain as part of the membership, £1 will be donated to charity. That is something that I'm going to do, from now on to the end. So that is something that I will definitely hold in high regard, just to show my gratitude of members joining my community. So it's something that I, feel very fortunate and blessed that that is something that happens to me in this day and age. So that is it today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you guys very, very soon. Goodbye.